Morning you guys, it's Karen and I wanted to come and talk to you about pet insurance because I was talking about it on Instagram. I had posted a copy of my claims history with the insurance company and I wanted to add up how close am I to my limit because, you know, Watson has had so many illnesses and things and we're very, very close. And I got asked by a couple of people actually, do I think pet insurance is necessary, and I also have two friends that I can think of that were saying they weren't sure whether or not they were going to bother with pet insurance. So I know that it's a question that people have. Should I get pet insurance? Is it worth it? And if I get it, which company should I go to? And I have got really strong feelings about both of these questions, about the answers, I guess. So should you get pet insurance? I think you absolutely should. And one of the people that was considering whether or not to get pet insurance said that her husband believed that the dog they had was a relatively healthy breed. But I don't think that there is such a thing as a healthy breed. I think the same as with humans, we will all deal with something through our life. I mean, there are not many people that never go to the doctors, that never have a trip to hospital, that never suffer with something, even if it's a cough that needs antibiotics. And so I don't think it's anything to do with the breed. I think a lot of it is just luck, you know, because even if you take away health, there's the health issues that could come with an animal, but there's also the accidents, and these are the things that I think people forget. Thank goodness we have pet insurance for Watson, because we chose the middle level of cover. You can get 3 different levels of cover or more with some companies, but with the company I'm with, you can get 3 different levels of cover. You can get £5,000 a year, £7,000 a year. I think there's a higher one of £10,000 a year, and obviously you pay your premiums accordingly. And we chose £7,000 a year under a covered for life policy. So that means he's covered for life. It's not something that we, you know, can stop. If we stop, then that's it. He's not covered anymore if we stopped paying. But as long as we keep on paying, he's covered for life up to £7,000 per year. But I just want to give you an example. Now, Watson, my Labradoodle, is probably the unluckiest dog alive regarding his health. He has every health issue going, and he's also had accidents and things happen that mean that this year we are only £500 away from reaching the £7,000 limit. But I want to give you examples of all that he's had wrong with him in his 5 years. He's 5 years old, because they are all things that could happen to any dog. So his health issues, he has allergies, and allergies in themselves, that can happen to any dog. White dogs are particularly susceptible, but it can happen to any dog. I know a black lab that has very bad allergies. It can happen to any dog, and it's not genetic. It's just one of those things that can happen. So Watson has allergies. That takes up a lot of our yearly allowance, because he has a monthly injection that is £100, so there's £1,000 a year already. He's on medication, which costs about £150 a month. There's another £1,500, so you're already at £2,500. He has to have special shampoos to wash him in. He has to have 2 different types of ear drops. There's a spray to put on his paws. These are just the things off the top of my head. For his allergies alone, we probably spend £3,000 a year. So allergies is something that could happen. Colitis. Watson has colitis, which is just inflammation of his gut, and he's had problems with his digestion since he was a puppy, and we're still battling them now. That has meant all sorts of different foods, but it's also meant that he's very susceptible to any bacterial infections going around. And he's had 3 major problems with infections, or not infections. The first one was he swallowed a stone. Now, puppies will swallow things. A lot of dogs, labs, will swallow things and may need an operation to remove them. So that's a consideration. But he swallowed a stone, he passed it through, but there was a lot of backwards and forwards and a lot of vet visits and a lot of fluids and different medications needed for that. He's since had Campylobacter poisoning, which is just dogs get infections. He got it from drinking stagnant water, and he's also then had what's called hemorrhagic gastroenteritis, just a bug. We don't know what caused it, But that included a hospital stay. And there was so many dogs in this area that had that same issue. The vets was absolutely rammed with dogs. And for one night in hospital, Watson was only there for 24 hours. It was £1,000. And so that's another thing that I think any dog can get a sickness bug. That's all it was. But he was so dehydrated, he was throwing up blood, he needed to go in hospital. So that's £1,000 for one night. He needed antibiotics, he needed a drip. You know, it's not something you can avoid. These are not things where you can say, oh, you know what, we'll just leave it, because he was extremely severely dehydrated. And there were dogs in very serious conditions that weren't caught early. We actually caught Watson pretty early. So that's another health issue. The third issue he has, we still don't know what it is, but he has a problem with it, either his hip or his knee at the back. And joint problems is something that, again, anybody could get. And if you don't get it genetically, or you don't have a problem, you could have an accident. There's so many dogs. You think how, if you've got a dog that does any kind of playing, whether it plays with other dogs, whether it runs, whether it's got a prey drive, you know, whether it chases a ball, whether it likes to jump into rivers, whether it likes to play with sticks, there's so many ways that they could injure themselves, that joints are another big area that I think it would do you good to have insurance to cover. For Watson, we thought it was hip dysplasia. He had an x-ray. It was confirmed as hip dysplasia, then it wasn't. That's a whole other video that I need to do at some point. And we're now going to continue on with the investigations, which I suspect might mean an MRI. And these kind of investigations, again, are very expensive. Now, these are ones that you could avoid because Watson is not limping every day and he's not in agony. But I don't really want to wait until then. I'm very glad that I have insurance that I can say, yes, let's go ahead and do an MRI and see if we can figure out what this is before he gets in awful pain. On top of those illnesses, he's had a broken tail, a limber tail, as you call it, just from, it was extremely hot and sunny and he went into a cold sea and lay down. That broke his tail. He had a grass dart in his ear that was resting against his eardrum, so he needed to have surgery for that. That was, again, unavoidable. The broken tail, you could say some people wait for their dog to recover, but we wanted the pain relief for him, and so we got a pain relief injection and confirmed that there wasn't, well, there could have been nerve damage. They can end up losing their tail if it doesn't get treated and looked at. What else has he had? He's had lumps removed. He's had a couple of operations to have lumps removed. There's so many other things that can happen. So I think I've laboured the point enough. Yes, I do think you need pet insurance. Now, I suppose you could say I would think that because I've used it to the max. I pay £40 a month, and like I said, we're nearing our £7,000 limit this year. So we could never have done without it. But there are people that have had it for 3 or 4 years, pay £50 a month and are saying, well, you know, I could have had £2,000 or £3,000 by now. That's true, but it's a risk. The point of insurance is to cover a risk, and so you have to accept that you are taking a risk. And if your dog suddenly gets cancer, I mean, I didn't mention that Watson's had a tumour as well, and so of course you want to have the tumour removed. If he'd have needed to have chemo and radiation, that would have been, we probably would have gone over our 7,000 and still had to spend money. But if your dog suddenly gets cancer, if your dog suddenly gets diabetes and you need ongoing medication, you will be so thankful for insurance. You know, like I said, it's not, yes, you probably could save up a few thousand over 3 or 4 years by not having insurance, but the risk is that your dog gets something that costs a lot more than that, and that you then have to consider, what are you going to do? Do you borrow money? Do you not keep the dog? I know people that have been unable to keep their dogs in the past because they haven't been able to afford the treatment that their dogs need. The other question is which pet insurance, and again, this is something where I have really strong feelings on, and I didn't realise that not many people knew this. So I'm with Petplan, and Petplan to me are amazing. Now, I know people have had big issues with Petplan, and it's mostly been about an increase in premium. And I met a guy in the woods on a walk a couple of weeks ago, and he had this exact problem, and he said he was with Petplan, but he moved away because they changed his premiums and it went up too much, and he was able to get a better quote elsewhere or online with them, and they wouldn't match it. So he went elsewhere, but he was thinking about going back to Petplan. There's so many things you need to know about that, right? Firstly, taking away the whether you go with Petplan or not, if you keep moving around different places, it's not like with contents insurance where you'll just get paid out. Every time you move, whatever the history of that pet is will not be covered. And it doesn't just mean the history of what was diagnosed. So for example, if you go into your vet because your dog has diarrhea or because your dog has vomiting and sickness, and you never find out what caused it, it could be that when you go to your next insurance company, they will not cover anything related to the stomach. Even stomach cancer, they could say, well, that was an underlying condition. And I think people don't realise this. Certainly the guy that I spoke to didn't realise it, because he said to me, the company I'm with just now won't cover her allergies. The dog he had said, won't cover her allergies. That's unusual. I've never heard of a company, an insurance company not covering allergies for a pet. But then when he later said about changing, I said, oh, okay, so you were with another company and did you see them about her allergies? And he said, yes. And I was like, that's why they won't cover it then, because they won't cover pre-existing conditions. And so he had been to a previous vet and claimed under a previous insurance for allergies, and they weren't then going to be covered going forward. So bear that in mind if you are thinking, oh, there's a much better quote out there. It may well be, but whatever, you have a look back and see, what have I claimed for, because that will then not be covered. So you can imagine us with Watson, we could not go to any other company if we wanted to, because he would then not be covered for any mast cell tumours that he got in the future, no allergies, no colitis, nothing, basically nothing else-wise he would be covered for. So what I want to tell you about Petplan is currently they are the only company, the only insurance company in the UK that will not increase their premiums in relation to claims. They do increase their premiums every year, as do all insurance companies. They do increase the premiums the older your dog gets, as do all insurance companies. And I suspect as Watson gets older, I'll have to pay a percentage of the claims, etc., etc. But they do not increase related to the claims. So meaning if I took on another Labradoodle, the same age as Watson, I would pay the same premiums per month for that Labradoodle, regardless of the fact that Watson has had hundreds of claims over 5 years. So why is that important? That's important because let's say you go to Animal Friends or Tesco or any other insurer for that matter, any other pet insurer, and you insure your pet and there's been no issues, but then all of a sudden they get diabetes. And so you need to put a claim in for all the initial investigations and then for the ongoing medication. But you're surprised when your renewal comes up that they've actually hiked up the price. You then are stuck because you either pay that high premium or you go to another insurer who will not then cover the diabetes. So I think that that's the huge risk of swapping insurance companies. And I use the diabetes as an example because that's one of the ones I read, thankfully, years back when I got Watson's insurance. I read about several cases that had gone to, I think one of them was Animal Friends, which may do a really low quote to start with, but then the premiums go up if you have any claims and then you're stuck. And it was a guy who was heartbroken because he said, his dog has got diabetes, the costs of the diabetes are a lot, but the premium, it literally went up from something like £50 a month to £200 a month. And he couldn't afford the premiums, but to go anywhere else, they would not cover the diabetes. And it was a real heartbreaking story. And like I said, I think people are just not aware that that could happen. And it could be any condition, it could be like cancer, like with Watson. And, he's got a 40% chance of getting this particular type of cancer back again. Imagine if then my premiums come through and I couldn't afford the monthly premium. It would just be absolutely devastating. My premiums, I think, started at about £20 and they're now £40. So in 5 years, they go up about £5 every year. I think maybe £10 maximum, I think it's gone up £9, say 1 year. But I'm just so glad that I went to Petplan in the beginning, because with everything that Watson's gone through, we wouldn't have been able to consider going anywhere else. And it just so happens that I did take heed of the fact that Petplan are the only ones that don't increase their premium. So I really want so many people to be aware of this so that you don't get caught out and so that, your pet doesn't have to go through any unnecessary pain or waiting or anything, you know. The other thing I'd say about Petplan is they have never turned a claim down for us, never. And they could have. You know, I worked in an insurance claims department actually for a couple of years, and I know that there's plenty of ways of getting around paying things. I'm just thinking of a particular claim that we put in, which was for the first cyst that Watson got on his paw. It was paid, no problem. Now that could have been turned down because it's put in under allergies. Otherwise it would have been under the excess. What we paid for the antibiotics and the consultation, that was £90, and the excess is I think it's £110. So it wouldn't have been worth claiming for it if it wasn't an extension to his allergies claim where we'd already paid the excess. And they paid that. Now they could have turned that down and said that could have happened to a dog without allergies, so it's under your excess. But they didn't. So my personal experience over 5 years has been they've never once turned a claim down for any reason. And I have always been paid within never longer than a week. They always pay very, very quickly. If there's ever been a delay, it's been at the end of the vet not putting in the e-claim for me immediately. A lot of these insurance companies advertise that they pay direct to the vet, but that depends on the vet. So don't be taken in too much by that either. That's a vet specific thing. I know that the dermatologist vet we go to, they will accept a direct claim only with Petplan. And again, lots of places only accept Petplan because they know how reliable they are. Whereas my vet, I have to pay up front. Regardless of which company I was with, you have to pay up front at the vets. That's more about your vets than it is about the insurer. Even if they have the option to pay the vet directly, the vet has to accept that. So at the dermatologist they will, and when we went to the emergency hospital, they also, for that £1,000 overnight, they were able to claim that directly from Petplan. But for our local vet, we have to pay first and then claim it back. So I think that's enough rambling from me. I hope that didn't sound too much like a lecture. It's not me telling you must get insurance. It's me telling you what could happen and just being worried that people are not aware. And I know how much people love their dogs. You know, when I said to that guy, you know, the allergies won't be covered because you've changed, and he was like, oh, I never thought of that. I didn't know that, you know. And he was like, so now if I change, there was something else I can't remember wrong with the dog. And he said, so that wouldn't be covered only if you've claimed for it. When I say, you know, it's something that you've actually claimed for that the insurance company are aware of, although they could also be within their rights to write to the vet and ask for a health check. I don't think they would. But yeah, you know, it was really upsetting to see. He was saying, oh, I feel terrible now. And it's like, well, hopefully I can let people know, and that will avoid other people being in the same situation. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any dilemmas, and I will try to help you the best I can. And yeah, that's everything. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll speak to you again soon.